Michigan State University professor and Olympian Kelly Salco MacArthur is once again part of the Olympics, this time leading a community art project. Through the Olympian Artists Program, Salco MacArthur participated in a workshop series creating mixed media collages with children from 2 community centers in Paris, France. Her workshop series from October 23rd to the 28th, 2023 was the first community project in the Olympian Artists Program leading up to the Olympic Games Paris 2024.
I grew up in a very creative household. My parents were both artists and designers. My father actually started the graphic design program at the University of Cincinnati, and my mother has always been dabbling in different arts and design areas her whole life. So I was really inspired from a young age to follow in their footsteps in some way. I always knew that I'd probably go into graphic design or architecture or industrial design. At the same time, I grew up as a tomboy. I was outside all the time. At a young age, I started playing tennis and swimming, and I thought that was really great. But then I tried rowing. And as soon as I tried rowing, I was 14 years old, I was hooked immediately. And it was all I could talk about. The first days on the water were the best. I went on to row in college for the University of Cincinnati. They had a great design program. While I was there, it's a 5-year graphic design program. And by the time you graduate, you have a 1.5 years of professional work experience. So those co-op experiences took me to different cities, which allowed me to work in design firms in New York, Philadelphia, and San Francisco, as well as train with different programs. So I rowed for the New York Athletic Club and Vesper Boat Club in Philadelphia, Bachelor's Barge Club in Philadelphia, trained on my own in San Francisco, did a lot of biking on the hills. And when I graduated from undergrad, I wanted to live in a city where I could pursue rowing and design at the same time. And so it was down to Boston or Philadelphia, really. And I decided on Philly, where the word was that the infamous Ted Nash was putting together a women's 8 to challenge the national rowing team for the first time ever. So that's a whole adventure. But I was working at a great small design firm in Philadelphia. I was rowing in the morning. I'd bike down to Center City to work, and then I would bike back to the boathouse for my second workout of the day and do it all over again.
How long have you been at MSU and what attracted you here?
I've been teaching at MSU for 17 years. Initially, I was drawn to everything that it had to offer. I liked the size of it, the fact that it's a Research One land-grant institution and has a really healthy arts and humanities offering here was the initial intrigue. But it was really when I came and visited on my interview. It was the people that welcomed me, the friendly atmosphere. I could really see myself fitting in here. And I have to say that that's how I've felt over these past 17 years. Michigan is such a comfortable place and a beautiful state to live in. And I've been so fortunate to be supported in my career here at MSU.
Maybe it's obvious your role as a graphic design professor here. What do you do?
I work with undergraduate and graduate students. We have an interdisciplinary graduate program. The undergraduate students that I'm working with are purely graphic designers. I teach everything from Graphic Design 1, which is the fundamentals of the design discipline, to the spatial design, which is a 400-level class. I really enjoy teaching typography. It's so exciting to see these students develop over the years and their time here. And I enjoy getting to know them and see them develop in their conceptual and their visual skills and their verbal skills. They're a special group of students who are really easy to get to know and easy to support.
And Kelly, let's not assume everyone joining our conversation knows what is graphic design. And I'm sure technology is part of your answer, but how has it evolved since your dad started the program to now?
Graphic design typically combines imagery and text to create a message for the public. We usually work for clients, so someone comes to us with a problem and we develop the solution, which is again, a mix of textual and visual. If I could define it in a very simple way, I would say it's the merging of form and content. We always have to consider who the audience is and what the message is that we're trying to send. We need to be very aware of the zeitgeist, how these different messages could be perceived on the other end, who our audience is, and how that may change their perception. Over the years, there have been more and more tools that are being introduced for designers to use. And I really think that we don't need to know all of the tools as a graphic designer, but we do need to be able to identify who can use those tools, who to collaborate with, and what's possible with all of this development that is just, exponentially growing.
Talk a little bit about how you combine your love for graphic design with your love for rowing.
Over the years, I've recognized that the two really help balance each other out. They're different, but they're also similar in my mind. I may find some of my best ideas when I'm out on the water in my single shell these days. My time in rowing and on the water, it's been thousands of miles that I've rowed across the world in different bodies of water around the world. Those miles have really instilled in me a very deep connection to the natural world. And because of that, I've focused my creative activity in environmental awareness, action, and advocacy. If someone's looking at my work, they may see that a lot of my projects use my own photography. Some of that is actually of water because I'm constantly intrigued by that surface. I could also say that both rowing and design incorporate team elements. I have had a lot of experience in team dynamics, being on rowing teams for most of my adult life. And I bring those experiences and that kind of perspective into the classroom. I hope that each of my students will tap into their own potential and really push themselves and see how hard they can work and how far they can go in their achievements. We set up a very professional and supportive environment in the classroom. The first day of every semester, I stand in front of the class and say, our time together may seem like it's going to be long, but in the true realm of life and your time here at MSU, it's going to be very short. And it's very precious. And we should recognize that the time we have together is special, and we can really develop a lot together through these hours that we have. And so I try to verbalize my own commitment to them in that class. And I hope that they are ready for that commitment on their end as well. I think if a student approaches their education with a mentality of taking advantage of all the opportunities in front of them while they are there, they will get to the end of that education and recognize that they've taken full advantage of what they could. I think the opportunities here at MSU are expansive, and we're all here to support the students. And so the better the students can take advantage of those support systems and those opportunities and resources, the better.
Talk about your experience you are an Olympian yourself. You were on the national women's rowing team in both the 2000 and 2004 Olympics. Just talk about how cool that is.
Oh, it was amazing. It almost feels like a different lifetime ago. It really hit me when I walked into the opening ceremonies in Sydney in 2000, and I was wearing my USA gear and walking in with the rest of the contingent, right there with Venus and Serena Williams and Marion Jones. And nobody knew who I was. Nobody was going to be broadcasting. Kelly Salcombe MacArthur walks in with the USA contingent. But it was such an awe-inspiring moment of walking with this group, looking up into the stands of the stadium at the flickering lights, and knowing that I had made it to the point that I had been striving for so many years, since I was 14. Of course, I didn't have those inspirations as soon as I started rowing, but things were moving along pretty well. And for a long time, I was telling myself I was training for the national team. Of course, it took years to make it to the national team, but that was my goal. It was very clear. My first senior national team was in 1998, and I rode in the quad, the women's quadruple sculls. We raced in Cologne, Germany, and then I made it into the next year's quad, and we raced in St. Catharines, Canada. Those were the world championships. In those worlds, we placed fourth, which meant that we qualified the USA quad to compete in the next Olympics, in the Sydney Olympics in 2000. Now, it may sound like I would have been confident with 2 senior national teams under my belt going into the Olympic year, but I really wouldn't believe that I would be one of those lucky few to make that boat until my name was officially in with U.S. Rowing, in with the Olympic Committee, and I was really convinced myself that I was actually going. In terms of racing at the Olympics, that was when the nerves hit, when I was sitting at the starting line with my teammates who I was so confident in. And of course, I had raced these other teams, these other women, many times in World Cups and World Championships, but there was something different at the Olympics. We started the race. I didn't feel any pain. It was all adrenaline, and I knew what to do, and I had practiced this stroke, catch and finish and send, so many times. It was absolutely ingrained in my muscle memory. Although I didn't feel any pain, I did feel distinctly like I could not push any harder, and my body could not put any more force into every stroke. My lungs couldn't take any more air. There was just a sense of I had reached my maximum capacity. And as soon as we crossed the finish line, that's when the pain hit. That was a huge inhale of just not being able to get enough air for the oxygen that my body needed. And just an amazing flood of emotions. I really couldn't believe I was there. We ended up finishing 5th in both Sydney and Athens. Some may say that that's a disappointment to come back to the United States without a medal, but I would say I'm so grateful to have been there. There are so many talented athletes that didn't make it to the Olympics, and I consider myself very lucky to have been there. And even though I did come home with 5th place under my belt, I'm really proud of it, and it's something that I'll always be proud of.
You should be proud, Kelly. Congratulations. And let's talk about sort of how, when, and why did you get involved with the Olympics as a graphic designer?
I applied for the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Artist Program, and this was before we really had a grasp on what COVID was and how it was going to affect every part of our lives. So the call for submissions that went out to Olympians and Paralympians around the world was requesting proposals for an interactive art or design installation that would be on site in Tokyo. So I submitted that. It wasn't selected. But then it also happened that the Olympics were postponed for a year, and that was even uncertain whether the Olympics were going to occur, and if they did occur, in what form might they occur. So the artist program continued, but they reconsidered how it would make sense to bring art to the community. So the next round of submissions was supposed to be for something that would be distinctly not interactive. They didn't want people congregating. They wanted these to be pieces that you weren't going to touch, that someone would walk by and not get too close to the person next to them. I was selected to design 5 Norin curtains, which are traditional Japanese panels that typically hang in entryways. And in considering what these curtains could portray, I recognized that the Tokyo Olympics was a very special occurrence, a very special opportunity, because it was going to be the first chance for the global community to come back together after COVID. So there was really resilience, there was uncertainty, there was fear, but there was a real sense of celebration that maybe life could continue the way that we remembered it had been before COVID. And that these athletes who had been training through this period of absolute uncertainty, and their training had been upset, and they had this goal of that year being their Olympic year, and then having to put that off for an uncertain 1 year later, it was really special design project to solve. In considering what these panels could be, I knew that I didn't want to represent anything figurative. I didn't want the sport community to be represented with a specific gender or sport or stature or ability or race or culture, country, any of those things. I wanted it to be as universal as possible. I recognized, and this is also informed by my own interests in environmental advocacy through design, that the human to natural connection is something that we all share. So I saw this as an opportunity to, again, advocate for environmental action and awareness. I took more photographs. I went through my library of photography that I had taken around the world and developed a series of 5 Norn curtains that show different natural elements and then are overlaid with Japanese and American characters. Through this, and part of my process in creating work, is I'm simultaneously writing and sketching and visualizing, and combining the text with the image is a kind of back and forth iteration of considering what the combination of those images and texts convey, if that's what I intend, again, how it could be perceived. So the written piece that was guiding me through this was: the human spirit prevails. We celebrate together in peace, in joy, in hope, in honor, and in sport.
What is the Olympian Arts Program?
This was launched in 2018 in Pyeongchang. It's a way for the Olympic community to connect with the cities where the Olympics are hosted. So it's a close collaboration between the host cities and the IOC and the Olympic Museum. To date, there have been 15 Olympians and 1 Paralympian who've been selected from 8 countries around the world to create artworks that were displayed at the Olympics. Part of this that was new for 2024 was also community-based art projects, which is something I was involved in.
Yeah. So let's talk about what you're doing for 2024 now.
In the lead up to the Olympics, I visited Paris for a week, and I led 2 series of workshops with at-risk children in children's centers. The first group was 6 to 11-year-olds, and the second group was adolescents. These children's centers were in 2 different neighborhoods. To prepare for this, I took photographs here in Michigan of children being active and sports spaces like fields and courts, and sports objects like balls and nets and tracks. And I also brainstormed on different words that would convey the Olympic values. I set those words in English and French. I printed those out. I came with all of that, multiple sets of that, to Paris, ready to work with as collage pieces. And when I arrived, I also took photographs on site. So this was something that the directors of the children's centers suggested so that we could create some familiarity of scenery or elements of these children's environments that they would recognize and be ready to work with. When we sat down, these workshops were there. It was a series of 2 workshops over 2 days. We talked about the Olympic values, how it was very special that the Olympics were coming to their city and they should feel like this is something that they're personally connected to. We went on photo safaris, and they shared with me the places where they feel they're strongest and they're most confident. We talked a lot about teamwork and confidence. And in this collage process, which is just cutting and gluing and taping fragments of text and image, and the result is that combination message. It was a very special time to talk to these children about their culture and their dreams and their experiences and what the Olympics mean and how this can inform their own outlook or their experience when it does come to their city. They were really engaged, and I loved sitting with them and listening to music and talking with them and working through this creative process. It was very engaging, quick, low-tech, easy, very accessible. Collage is a really fun way to work through a creative process. And it's engaging for any age. So it's something that I actually bring into my classroom with my graphic design students too. At the end of this workshop series, we had vernissages at each of the children's centers, which is a gallery opening. And that was special because the children got to see the work that they had created. We hung them up. For the young ones, I hung them low so that it was at their eye level. And they talked about what they were doing, and I talked about how impressed I was with their insight and their creativity. The adolescents, their vernissage was a combination of photographs they had taken with my professional camera, which they thought was a lot of fun, and the collages that they had created. And it really turned into a nice celebration of the meeting of our cultures and the time that we had had together. My hope is that what remains is the memories of our time together and the connections that we formed, because they really had a large impact on me. And all the times that I had been to these other countries as an athlete, I had never had that opportunity to spend with the people who lived there. Last year, I approached the City of Ann Arbor's Office of Sustainability and Innovation to see if they might be interested in recognizing Ann Arbor Olympians in alignment with the 2024 Ann Arbor Bicentennial. So I've been working with them to commemorate local Olympians. This will be occurring at the new Bicentennial Park that will be opening in southeast Ann Arbor in the spring. There's going to be a inclusive and accessible play area and a lot of upgrades to that park. So I hope that it will create a space for physical activity, community connection, sustainability, and creativity as an appropriate place for the Ann Arbor Olympians and Paralympians to be commemorated.
So what do you want to say about the underdogs?
As someone who has always considered herself an underdog, something that I love about the Olympics is that it gives the athletes who do not get a lot of attention otherwise a moment in the limelight and the attention that they deserve after so much sacrifice, so many years. And I know we hear this a lot, but to live through that every day is to understand it in a different way. I especially love seeing the athletes who upend the expectations, who do something that nobody could see coming, and are surprised by what their own capabilities are on this world stage. I can say that I had gone through years of prioritizing rowing, and it was such an exciting such an exciting period of my life. But I had no salary. I was ranked by the month based on my rowing score, and if I was ranked high enough, I got a small stipend. So I was living in people's garages, quite literally, or attics, and I was just making ends meet, and I had a boat before I had a car. So there was a lot going on that my close friends and family knew about, but it really remains in the periphery, and the Olympics are a chance for the entire worldwide community to finally see these exceptional athletes doing what they're so passionate about.
Spartans will, Kelly. Thank you.
Indeed.
That's Kelly Salco MacArthur. She's a professor of graphic design in the Department of Art History, and Design at Michigan State University. She's also an Olympian in more ways than one, which we've been talking about. Probably a great place to go to learn more about Kelly and her work is her website, elevatedesign.org. And I'm Russ White. This is MSU Today.